All right, guys, we are solving quadratic equations by graphing. Hopefully you remember from talking about solving quadratic equations what the zeros look like, or the roots, or the solutions, the x values. All of those are talking about the same thing. And so those solutions are wherever the graph of the parabola crosses the x-axis. So in this first diagram here, whoa, it's right there. In the second diagram, it's here and here. And in this third diagram, there are no real roots. And so if we're going to figure out what the solution is just by looking at the graph, this one would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This one would be negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 6, and 2. And this would, again, have no real solutions. So when we're looking at this and we want to solve this by graphing, we're going to go ahead and look at this in the calculator. So open your calculator up, go to y equals, and go ahead and type this in, x squared plus 6x plus 8. There's a few different ways to figure out what the solution is. First thing I'm going to do is just look at the graph. And so when I look at the graph, it looks like it's going to cross at -2 and -4, but I wouldn't really trust a graph. I would go ahead and double check. There's a few different ways we can double check. So I'm going to look at the table of values for this one. Second graph. And just keep in mind that those zeros are literally going to be where your y value is 0. So this kind of works out nicely because I can look in the y column and look to see where the y values are 0. It's at -4 and -2, exactly like I thought. So we're going to go ahead and write that solution here. -4 and -2. Here's one for you to try. Please remember the very first step is to get it in the correct form. That's all I'm going to tell you about that one. Here's another one. And speaking of getting it in the correct form, I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. I need to get this in standard form. So now it's in standard form. I am going to go ahead and look at this graph in the calculator. So go to y equals, and I'm just going to type this in. Negative x squared plus 4x minus 1. So here's what our graph looks like, and if you kind of look closely, it does not go through an integer, and if we looked at the table of values, which you can go ahead and do in your calculator, you will not find a value where the y value, you will not find an ordered pair where the y value is 0. So I'm going to go about finding this a different way. And so there's a function on the calculator called 0. So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to hit 2. It's just, you got to be really careful as to how you use it. So here's the 0 that I'm trying to find where it's crossing the x-axis. It asks what the left bound is, and it's already to the left of that. So I'm going to hit enter. Then it asks for the right bound. I'm going to move my cursor so it's just to the right of that 0, and I'm going to hit enter again. And then it asks for a guess, and I'm just going to go ahead and hit enter again. And so general rule of thumb is we're going to go ahead and round this to 3 decimal points. So it would be 0.268 as one of the roots. And then we're going to go ahead and go back in to find the other root. So I'm going to hit second trace again to get into that calculate menu. I'm going to hit 0 because that's what I'm finding. I'm finding a 0. And it's going to ask for the left bound. Now I'm talking about this point right here. So I'm going to arrow over. And now when I'm to the left of that point, it's above the x-axis. We'll talk about this a little bit more in class, but I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. It's going to ask for the right bound. So I'm going to arrow to the right of that 0 and hit enter. And then it asks for a guess. I'm going to hit enter again. And so to 3 decimal places, this looks like it's 3.732. And again, you're just looking at your X value to get those roots. All right, we will talk more about this tomorrow.